provisionally postponed by the Pietermaritzburg High Court to February next year. Judge Nompumelelo Khatebe saying there are outstanding management issues that needed to be resolved. Joining me now in studio to talk about this is our politics editor, Sbu Ngalwa. Sbu, a very good morning to you and thank you very much for coming through. So, the court saying that there are these issues at management level that need to be sorted out, but also the witnesses, some of them are overseas and there are COVID-19 restrictions, therefore they can't get here. Is it fair to say that this is a delaying tactic in as far as this long-standing trial is concerned?
I don't think it would be fair in this particular case. I mean, what cannot be denied is the fact that this case has been dragging for so long. Yeah. Jacob Zuma was first charged in December 2007, and just after the Polokwane conference, and it's now 13 years later. So perhaps you can understand the frustration with the delay. But I think in this particular case, as the judge articulated in court, the various reasons why there was a delay, and also another important point is that in this case, had Zuma's lawyers felt that it was unfair on them, they would not have agreed to the postponement, because we understand that there was an agreement before it got to court between the prosecution and the state and the defense, both Thales representatives and former President Zuma's representatives, to say it makes sense to postpone the matter, because you would recall that Thales is challenging the racketeering charge against them. So their ruling there has a bearing on this case. So therefore, at a procedural level, it perhaps makes no sense to continue with the Zuma trial while that issue is still outstanding, by the COVID-19 regulations as they were spelled out by the judge.
The Thales ruling, has it not been heard? And if it has, why is it taking long to deliver that judgment in the meantime?
I think the judiciary actually should explain these things to us as to why some rulings take longer than others. I mean, when a judge simply says the judgment is reserved, you are at the discretion of the judge to hear as to when that ruling will come. The application has already been heard. What is outstanding is the outcome of that very application, which now has a bearing on this case. Now, I would imagine that the assumption would have been that by the time we got to the 8th of December, that matter would have been concluded, paving the way for the Zuma trial to proceed. Now that it's still not been resolved, and also added to that the issues of COVID-19 and how that affects witnesses, that has a bearing on the start of the trial. So I guess then, hence the judge actually made the point to say that by February 23rd, when the matter resumes, the Thales issue should have been concluded.
Yeah. Sbu, I can't not go back to a conversation I had with a man who sat exactly where you were, Bulelani Ngcuka, the former NDPP, and going back to why he never charged the former president. He said that, well, the complexion of the case has now changed. There are added charges, if you like, that would have, I guess, made his case much stronger. For example, there is the racketeering charge. Thales is challenging this particular charge. If it does fall off, what would that mean for this case?
I think without getting much into the realm of speculation, there are other over 700 counts that the former president is charged with. But obviously, if then they are able to get off on that particular charge, I think obviously it would have an automatic bearing, because they are both charged with that particular, I think it's money laundering, fraud, and racketeering.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that Jacob Zuma cannot be, in the same way that corruption is perpetuated or conducted by two people. Sure. The same applies to a case of racketeering, although racketeering, in terms of its broader definition, does involve more people. I mean, it deals with issues like organized crime, mostly, yes. Which perhaps also explains why Thales would be going to court in this particular case.
Saying they're not aware, they would not have been aware that Jacob Zuma was allegedly receiving bribes from Shabir Sheikh. How were they to know that? This is their argument. We're not making that argument for them, but this is what they are arguing. Again, the question remains, what happens if this charge of racketeering falls off, at least on the part of Thales?
I think at a basic level, there are still other charges to be answered, but also to understand and also to break it down. The reality is that Shabir Sheikh was found guilty, and in fact his trial pretty much mirrors what Jacob Zuma's trial is, which is why that question you had posed to Bulelani Ngcuka was quite an interesting one, to say, why did you not? And then he says that he did not believe he had a good enough case. Well, I understand that some members of his prosecution team, actually within the NPA, believe that they had a case, that they should have. And there is a strong view that the decision not to charge Jacob Zuma at that time was political, and perhaps that also explains why that has been his major issue. Part of his defense has been around the fact that there has been politics have been at play. In fact, the reason why those charges were even dropped in 2009, because at that time the acting NDPP Mukute Dimshe had said that there was political interference. Of course, that was thrown out by the Supreme Court of Appeals thereafter. So it has been a long road and a murky road. So we are where we are now. Let's see what happens when the matter resumes on the 23rd of February.
We can't ignore, Sbu, the interconnectedness of what is happening that goes back many years. You have the Hlophe Tribunal, which has to do with the former president and the trial that he faced at the time. I don't want to drag you to that space, but let's not let you go without at least hearing whether we're going to hear from the NEC of the ANC, the outcomes of the meeting. It comes to an end today. The president making some interesting admissions, some of them saying, well, I mean, saying that the leadership of the ANC is divided, and that unity seems to be this elusive thing that the ANC is trying to find. Why are you stating the obvious? Tell us what you're going to do about those who are charged with corruption.
I think the president knows that he's under pressure. His integrity is at stake, because he came out and took an unprecedented step and addressed a press conference and drew the proverbial line on the sand and said that no more, the ANC will no longer tolerate. Now, if you look at his political report that was released yesterday, he makes mention of these 5 legal opinions. It makes no sense why the party would look for 5 legal opinions. But his characterization of those legal opinions is that these legal opinions are actually an indictment of the ANC. They just underline the level of divisions and chaos within the party. So he is in a way trying to hark back and try and claw some of that moral ground that the ANC would have lost. But I think the discussions of today will pretty much determine that, because what we understand, Goli, from yesterday, the discussions yesterday, is that it's whether the national officials of the ANC, the issue of the elephant in the room, obviously, is the issue of Magashule.
Yeah.
Now, the question is whether the national officials of the ANC are given an opportunity to deal with that, or whether it goes to the Integrity Commission. My understanding is that as of last night, the decision or the prevailing view was that Ace Magashule should appear before the Integrity Commission within a limited period, over 7 days, over the next 7 days, to answer for the charges he's facing, and whatever decision that the Integrity Commission makes, then the party would endorse. But that is also a diversion, because that very Integrity Commission reports to the NEC.
Yeah.
And the NEC took a decision in August to say unequivocally that anyone who is charged with corruption or a serious crime should step aside.
So what are these legal opinions about? He's right by questioning.
Pretty
why
much.
Would you go for 5 legal opinions only for you to try and avoid implementing your resolutions?
It is a diversion, because the reality is it's a political decision. Once you subject it to legal master or to a legal interpretation, the reality is that you will end up with a scenario as you have.
Yeah.
It can be 5, it can be 10, it can be 15, and all 15 of them would pretty much look different.
Sbu, the main issue here for some is that the ANC has a moral issue at hand. Legalese aside, it's about political morality. Should Ace Magashule be in office at Luthuli House or not, given the charges that he faces?
The reality is that he should not. And so should any other member of the ANC who's facing serious charges. I think that's why also there is a reference to the fact that the ANC's moral obligation and its values as an organization, historical values, that why should you have to rely on a legal opinion when you know that for the greater good of all, it makes sense that you save the party.
Sbu Ngalwa, let's end it there. Pontificating, you and I. We're going to be attacked, I'm sure. But look, we have to put these things out there.
Look, it's their own decision. So.
Yeah. All right, let's end it there.